I am super happy to see you. I hope you are having a fantastic week. If you are new around here and you don't know me, my name is Christy Lawrence. I own a company called Time to Profit, where I help businesses and business owners make more money by finding and winning clients they most want to work with. So one of the things that we are going to be talking about for the next few weeks, or started talking about last week, is how to use a plan to help you to find and win those clients. And if you missed last week's video, I highly encourage you to go back and check it out. It's going to create a lot of context for the way that I look at planning, create some mindset shifts around planning, and also to help you really get clear on, is a sales plan the best use of your time and resources? So if you've missed that, go back, watch it, and then come back and check out this week's video. So this week in particular, I want to give you 5 essential elements that any plan needs to include in order to make that plan work for you. So let's just dive right into those 5 elements. So the very first one, and this probably goes without saying, is a goal, right? Like, you probably are thinking, oh my gosh, Christy, come on. I know this. I hear you. But I want to just make sure that you include your goal, because you need to know where you're going, right? And that's one of the critical elements. But here is where we kind of fall short sometimes in the goal element of planning, is that we just look at our goal of where we want to go, but your plan should also include some reflection of your most recent goals. So whether that was for last quarter or for last year, you really want to identify what was your past goal and how close were you to achieving that? Did you knock it out of the park and totally exceed it, or did you just miss it by a narrow margin? This is going to give you insight both in terms of shaping your goal for the current time frame that you're working on, whether that's annually, quarterly, monthly, and it's also going to give you some insight into what worked and what didn't. And these are things that are going to be critical for you in terms of the planning process. We've all heard that quote, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. And this is true in our businesses as well. So I want you to spend some time as you're thinking about putting your goal in for the time frame for 2020, for Q1, whatever time frame you're working for, spend some time learning from history so that that goal has more meaning and relevance, and you create the right action items that are going to help you move forward in that direction. So a goal is the first element that you want to include. The second one that you want to include to make sure that your plan is going to work for you is, what is your key priority or key priorities, but I'm going to be really kind of challenge you on this, that will help you achieve this goal. Where a lot of people get caught up on this is they identify too many priorities. Now, in a perfect world, we have the time and the bandwidth to do all the things that we want to do, all the things that are going to help us grow, and we can treat all priorities equally. But the thing is, priority actually assumes that it is something that you're putting above everything else. Just because something's not a priority doesn't mean it's not something that you're going to make effort towards or put work towards. But when you're thinking about your plan, really identifying what is that priority, or if you're doing it annually, what are those 3 priorities that are going to help you reach the goal. And you've got to narrow it down. Not everything can be a priority. And so really to start thinking about, what is the one thing that's going to have the biggest impact on my ability to be successful? That's got to be your priority. That's got to come first. I'm going to be talking about my favorite resources around planning here in the next couple of weeks, but one resource that I will be talking about then that I'll mention here is the book, The One Thing. It's a great framework for shifting your mindset around actually honing in on what is the priority. So you definitely want to make sure that you narrow down that key priority so that your plan is focused around that versus everything that you might want to do, which just might not be realistic. So when you're in a time crunch, you always know what is that key priority. And then underneath that key priority, the third thing that your plan needs to include so that it works for you is, what are those critical action steps that you need to be doing on a quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily basis that is going to help you to reach those goals. So for me, right now, my key priority is developing a course or a mentorship around sales for people who want to be proactive about growing their business and finding their customers, but maybe don't feel like they have the right tools and skills to do so successfully. Well, in order to do that, one of my action items is actually talking to potential customers. What is it like when you haven't been in sales to start having sales conversations? Where do you get hung up? What makes you feel uncomfortable? Because I've been doing sales for so long, I forget the parts that are hard, right? So I need to be having those conversations. I also need to be developing content and outlines, right? And recording videos. There's all of these things that I need to be doing, and so I've got to break it down. Both some of these are one-time items, some of them are things I'm going to be doing for a while on a weekly basis or on a daily basis. Write those down, put it in a checklist around what are those action steps that you need to be doing in order to hit your goal. It's going to make this plan much more effective for you in the long term and make sure that the plan works for you. I will say I do have a sales planning checklist that you can download. I'll tell you about that at the end of the video, but you can get it at mytimetoprofit.com. It's a great way to start if you haven't identified some key action steps around sales specifically. The fourth thing that your plan absolutely needs to include is a list of resources that you anticipate you might need. Oftentimes we forget this step and we're like, we'll figure it out when we get there. But what happens is we're busy, things are going on, there's something that's on our checklist and we go to do it. So it might be sending emails of helpful information to prospects. Well, we realize we don't have a database of helpful resources, whether those are articles or whether those are white papers or whether those are coupons, whatever it is. If we don't have those, then we get stuck trying to create them versus actually implementing them. So identify all of the resources that you think you might need in advance so you can get those at your fingertips so that doesn't become a roadblock into actually taking those critical action steps on a regular basis. So that kind of dives into our fifth thing that the plan needs to include, and that is a list of challenges that you anticipate that you might face, along with a strategy to overcome them. So, for example, if you think that you might run out of time at the end of the day or not be motivated, maybe your plan is to make your contacts earlier in the day. The research on this is phenomenal. The research shows that when people have a goal, if they think that goal is going to be easy to achieve and they won't run into roadblocks, they're much less likely to be successful versus people who recognize that hitting their goal is going to be challenging, that they're going to have obstacles, and they plan for those obstacles in advance. The analogy I use about this is when I go to the grocery store, I know I'm going to hit red lights. There's not a surprise. I don't turn around and go home because all of a sudden I have to stop for a minute. I knew that was going to happen. No big deal. My plan is that I'm going to stop and I'm going to wait for it to turn green. We need to do this in our businesses too. It's going to help us set ourselves up for success and maintain momentum when we hit those roadblocks. So do not skip this step. Identify what are the core challenges that you think might get in the way of you achieving that goal, and how will you overcome them. The other powerful thing about this is you're going to be much more creative in your strategies for overcoming challenges when you're not actually faced with them. You're not having the stress, you're not under the gun, you're going to have the bandwidth and the creativity to be like, what might I do here? And what you come up with might surprise you. And it's going to be much more rich and meaningful than if you're trying to do it right when your back's up against the wall. So make sure you spend time identifying those challenges and creating a plan to overcome them. So quick recap, the 5 essential elements that you're going to want your plan to include are a goal, and you also want some reflection on your past goals, your key priority or priorities, but narrow that down, right? Priority, what's actually most important, which isn't everything. The third thing is what are the key action steps that you need to take to hit those priorities. The fourth thing, what are the resources that you need? And the fifth thing, what are the challenges that you anticipate facing with a plan to overcome them? If you want a template to help you plan and create a sales planning sales plan for your business, head on over to mytimetoprofit.com. There's a free sales planning guide with a checklist of items to be doing on a monthly, quarterly, weekly, daily basis with some steps for you to incorporate some of your own activities. You can cross out the ones that don't work. Again, that's mytimetoprofit.com. You can download the free resource there and join me next week while we continue this conversation around creating plans that will work for you to help you make more money by finding and winning the clients you most want to work with.